Danny Cole had never expected to see the stars. He grew up on a small farm in Kansas where the biggest excitement was watching thunderstorms roll across the endless plains. His father died when he was 16, leaving behind debts that threatened to swallow everything the family owned. His mother worked double shifts at the local diner. His younger sister Emma sold lemonade by the roadside every summer. They survived, but barely. When the United Earth Space Initiative offered scholarships for young engineers willing to serve on joint human-alien research vessels, Danny applied without telling anyone. He was 23 years old, had a degree from a community college, and possessed nothing special except a willingness to work harder than anyone else. To his shock, they accepted him. Now he stood in the engine room of the Artemis Dawn, a research vessel exploring the outer reaches of the Velar Nebula. The ship carried 42 crew members from 6 different species. Danny was the youngest human aboard, and at first the aliens had confused him. They were tall and thin with silver skin. They had 4 arms and spoke in deep rumbling voices. They looked like walking trees and communicated through color changes in their bark. But Danny treated them all the same way he treated folks back home. He smiled, asked questions, and listened when they answered. He shared stories about Kansas sunsets and learned about alien worlds in return. Within 3 months, he had made friends that his younger self could never have imagined. His closest friend was a translator named. The alien suffered from terrible social anxiety, a condition rare among his telepathic species. Others avoided him because his nervousness created uncomfortable mental static. But Danny did not care about telepathy. He taught to play chess, a game the alien found fascinating because it required no mental reading, only logic and patience. They played every evening after dinner. Usually won, but Danny did not mind. He enjoyed the company and the quiet conversations about everything and nothing. On the night everything changed, Danny was running a routine diagnostic on the secondary power coupling. The Artemis Dawn had stopped to survey an unusual energy signature near an unnamed asteroid field. Captain Helen, a stern woman with gray hair and kind eyes, believed it might be remnants of ancient alien technology. Danny finished his work and headed to the mess hall for a late snack. He was thinking about the letter he would send his mother tomorrow, telling her about the strange purple nebula clouds he had seen that morning. She would not understand the science, but she would appreciate knowing her son was happy. The first explosion knocked him off his feet. Alarms screamed through the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Danny scrambled upright and ran toward the engine room, thinking they had suffered a malfunction. But the second explosion came from outside the ship, and he realized with growing horror that they were under attack. The Artemis Dawn was a research vessel. It carried minimal weapons and even lighter armor. It was never meant to fight. Danny reached the engine room and found chaos. 2 engineers were trying to restore power to the shields, but something had disabled their systems with surgical precision. Chief Engineer shouted orders while sparks flew from damaged consoles. Then the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in after 3 terrible seconds of darkness. Danny heard the sound that would haunt his dreams for years to come, the metallic grinding of another ship attaching itself to their hull. They were being boarded. Ordered everyone to stay calm, but fear spread through the crew like wildfire. The Artemis Dawn had no soldiers, no security team, nothing but scientists and engineers facing an unknown enemy. The boarders cut through the airlock in minutes. They wore black armor and helmets that hid their faces. They moved with military precision, sweeping through the ship and gathering the crew in the main cargo bay. No one resisted. There was no point. Danny found himself standing between and a young human botanist named Maria Santos. Both were trembling. Danny was trembling too, but he kept his face calm. Someone had to. The leader of the boarders removed his helmet. He was humanoid but not human, with pale blue skin and eyes that held no warmth. Danny recognized the species from his training, a race known for their involvement in criminal enterprises across the galaxy. The Syndicate, even Danny had heard of them. They operated beyond galactic law, dealing in smuggling, extortion, and worse. No one knew how large their organization was or who led them. They were ghosts who left only destruction in their wake. The leader spoke in accented but clear English. He explained that they were not there to kill anyone. They simply needed something, and once they had it, they would leave. The crew would be set adrift but alive. Then his soldiers began scanning each crew member with handheld devices. They moved down the line methodically, spending only seconds on each person before moving to the next. Danny watched them scan Maria then. Nothing happened. When the device passed over Danny, it began to beep. The soldier froze. He scanned Danny again. The beeping grew louder. He called the leader over, speaking in a language Danny did not understand. The leader studied Danny with sudden interest. He asked Danny his name and where he was from. Danny answered honestly because he saw no point in lying. The leader smiled, and that smile contained nothing good. "Take him," the leader said. Two soldiers grabbed Danny by the arms. He struggled, but they were stronger. Lurched forward to help, but a soldier struck him down with a single blow. Maria screamed. Captain demanded to know what was happening, but the leader ignored her. Danny was dragged toward the airlock. He twisted his head and saw his watching helplessly. He saw lying on the floor with silver blood on his face. He saw the fear in everyone's eyes, and he felt his own fear threatening to drown him. But he also felt something else. He felt anger. He did not know why they wanted him. He was nobody special, just a farm boy from Kansas who had gotten lucky with a scholarship. He had no secrets, no special skills, nothing that should interest criminals like the Syndicate. Yet they had come for him specifically. The device had reacted to him and no one else. The airlock door closed behind him, cutting off the screams of his. The soldiers marched him through a connecting tunnel into the enemy ship. It was dark and cold and smelled like metal and fear. Danny was thrown into a small cell. The door sealed with a heavy clang. He was alone in the darkness, light years from home, taken by enemies he did not understand for reasons he could not imagine. He pressed his hands against the cold wall and thought about his mother. He thought about Emma. He thought about the farm and the Kansas sky and everything he might never see again. But he did not cry. He would not give them that satisfaction. Back on the Artemis Dawn, Captain sent an emergency transmission before the ship's communications finally died. The message traveled across space at faster-than-light speeds, bouncing through relay stations and crossing light years in hours. It reached Earth the next morning. The message was short and desperate and contained only the essential facts. A research vessel had been attacked. Crew members were injured. One human had been taken by the Syndicate. His name was Danny Cole. He was 23 years old. He was one of theirs. And Earth would never forgive what had been done to him. Admiral Gregory Stone had served in the United Earth Defense Fleet for 34 years. He had seen wars and skirmishes and diplomatic crises that would have broken lesser men. He had buried friends and made impossible decisions, and carried the weight of humanity's safety on his shoulders. But he had never felt rage like this. He stood in the command center of Fleet Headquarters in Geneva, surrounded by screens showing data from across the galaxy. The message from the Artemis Dawn had arrived 6 hours ago. Since then, his staff had worked without rest to gather every piece of information available about the attack. The Syndicate had made a terrible mistake. They had touched something sacred without understanding what it meant. Admiral Stone turned to face the assembled officers and government officials. The room was silent. Everyone knew what was coming. "We are going to get him back," the Admiral said. His voice was calm but carried an edge that made junior officers shiver. "Every ship we have, every soldier, every resource. We will find Danny Cole and bring him home, and we will make the Syndicate wish they had never heard of Earth. The mobilization began within the hour. Across Earth, military bases that had been quiet for years suddenly roared to life. Ships that had been in maintenance were rushed to completion. Soldiers on leave were recalled immediately. Reserves were activated. Factories that produced weapons switched to emergency production schedules. The galaxy had never seen humans move so fast. Ambassador Wells received the news while attending a diplomatic function on the. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for being unflappable. She had negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements with species that considered humans little more than clever animals. She returned to the Galactic Council chambers within 36 hours. The Council was already in emergency session. Representatives from over 100 species filled the massive circular hall. News of the attack on the Artemis Dawn had spread quickly, and many were curious how the humans would respond. The ambassador spoke first. He expressed sympathy for the attack and suggested that Earth file a formal complaint against the Syndicate. The Council would investigate. Sanctions might be possible within a year or two. The proper procedures must be followed. Wells listened politely. Then she stood to address the assembly. She explained that Earth appreciated the Council's concern. She acknowledged that proper procedures existed for situations like this. She understood that the galactic community preferred to handle such matters through diplomacy and patience. Then her voice changed. It became harder, colder, and absolutely certain. "But we will not wait," she said. "Danny Cole is a citizen of Earth. He is not a soldier or a diplomat or anyone of strategic importance. He is a young man from a farming family who wanted to see the stars. The Syndicate took him from a peaceful research vessel without provocation or warning." She paused and looked around the chamber. Every eye was fixed on her. "Earth has already mobilized its military fleet. We will find the Syndicate. We will destroy every base, every ship, every operation they possess until Danny Cole is returned to us. This is not a request for Council approval. This is a notification of intent." The chamber erupted in chaos. Ambassadors shouted protests and warnings. Some demanded that Earth stand down. Others questioned whether humans had lost their minds. The ambassador, a massive figure with 4 arms crossed over his chest, managed to make himself heard above the noise. He asked Wells a simple question. Why would Earth risk galactic war for one ordinary person? His answer silenced the entire chamber. "Because he is ours," she said, "and we do not abandon our own. Not ever. Not for any reason. If the Syndicate does not understand this, they will learn. If the galaxy does not understand this, then watch and remember." She sat down. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then the ambassador did something unexpected. He stood and announced that the collective would offer their stealth ships to assist in the search. The humans had shown them respect and friendship over the years. This was a debt that demanded payment. One by one, other species began to offer their support. They provided their intelligence networks. They contributed medical vessels. Even species that had been cool toward humanity found themselves moved by the raw determination in its words. The Galactic Council did not authorize Earth's actions, but it did not stand in their way either. Far from the council chambers, in a dark cell aboard a ship, Danny Cole woke to the sound of footsteps. His captors had given him water but no food. The cell was cold, and his muscles ached from sleeping on the metal floor. He had no idea how long he had been unconscious or where they were taking him. The door opened. The leader entered, flanked by 2 guards. He looked at Danny the way a scientist might look at an interesting specimen. He explained what they had found. Danny's genetic code contained a marker that had not been seen in thousands of years. It matched the activation sequences for ancient technology scattered across the galaxy. weapons and machines built by a civilization that died before most current species evolved. Danny did not understand. He was just a farm boy from Kansas. His family had no special history, no alien connections, nothing that could explain what the was describing. The leader smiled at his confusion. He said that genetics were strange things. Markers could lie dormant for countless generations before appearing again. Danny was likely descended from humans who had been experimented on by the ancient civilization, though he would never know the details. What mattered was that Danny could activate technology worth more than entire star systems. The Syndicate intended to use him whether he cooperated or not. Danny looked at the leader and spoke for the first time since his capture. "Go to hell," he said. The leader's smile did not waver. He simply nodded to his guards. They grabbed Danny and dragged him from his cell. They took him to a room filled with machines Danny could not identify. They strapped him to a table. They attached sensors to his head and chest. Then they began their experiments. Danny screamed. The pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It felt like fire burning through his veins, like lightning striking his brain over and over. They were trying to force his genetic marker to activate, using technology that was brutal and crude and cared nothing for his suffering. The experiments continued for hours. Danny lost track of time. He lost track of everything except the pain and his determination to give them nothing. Between sessions, lying broken on the cold floor of his cell, Danny thought about home. He thought about his mother's cooking and Emma's laugh, and the way the wheat fields looked at sunset. He held onto those memories like lifelines, refusing to let them break him. He did not know that Earth was coming for him. He did not know that humanity had set the galaxy ablaze for his sake. He knew only that he was alone and hurting and far from everyone he loved. But he refused to give up. He was a coal, and coals did not quit. Back on Earth, his mother watched the news in her small farmhouse kitchen. The government had contacted her personally. They had told her what happened and what they were doing about it. She looked at the photograph of Danny on the wall, taken the day he left for space. He was smiling, excited, full of hope for the future. "Bring my boy home," she whispered to no one. "Please bring him home." Somewhere in space, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled began its hunt. The carrier Relentless led the fleet through hyperspace like a blade cutting through darkness. Commander stood on the bridge and watched the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel through the main viewport. Behind his ship, over 200 vessels followed in tight formation. Was 51 years old with gray at his temples and scars on his hands from decades of service. He had commanded ships in 3 different conflicts and never lost a crew member he could have saved. The thought of Danny Cole, alone and suffering in enemy hands, burned in his chest like a hot coal. Their first target was a supply station in the system. Intelligence suggested it served as a waypoint for ships moving through the outer territories. If the Syndicate had taken Danny through this region, someone at the station would know. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The supply station hung in space ahead of them, a ugly structure of metal and stolen technology. Defensive platforms activated immediately, but they were designed to fight off pirates and small raiding parties. They were not designed to fight a fleet. Gave the order. The Relentless opened fire first, followed by every ship in the formation. The station's shields collapsed in seconds. Its defensive platforms were destroyed before they could launch a single missile. The battle lasted less than 4 minutes. Human Marines boarded the station and secured its data cores. They treated wounded enemy personnel and handed them over to Allied vessels for imprisonment. They did not torture or execute anyone. That was not the human way. But they made very clear what would happen to anyone who stood between them and Danny Cole. The data cores provided coordinates for 3 more facilities. The fleet split into groups and attacked all 3 simultaneously. Each battle followed the same pattern: overwhelming force, surgical precision, and mercy for those who surrendered. Word spread through the criminal underworld faster than the fleet could travel. The humans were coming, and nothing could stop them. Received medical treatment for the injuries he had suffered during the attack on the Artemis Dawn. His skull had been fractured, and his telepathic abilities were temporarily impaired. The doctors recommended rest and recovery. Refused, he demanded to join the rescue mission. His request caused confusion among the fleet commanders, were pacifists who rarely involved themselves in military operations. Their telepathic abilities were valuable, but their physical fragility made them poor soldiers. Did not care about any of that. He appeared before the mission coordinators via holographic communication and made his case. Danny Cole was kind to me, he said. His voice was quiet but steady. When others avoided me because of my condition, he sat with me. He taught me games and told me stories. He treated me like a friend when he had no reason to. He paused, and his silver eyes reflected something that surprised the humans watching: determination. Among my people, such kindness creates a bond that cannot be broken. I will help find Danny, or I will die trying. This is not negotiable. Commander personally approves assignment to the mission. The alien joined a small intelligence team responsible for analyzing captured data and identifying Danny's location. The hunt continued for 18 days. During that time, Earth forces destroyed 14 facilities across 7 star systems. They captured hundreds of syndicate members and seized enough evidence to expose criminal operations that had operated in secret for decades. Allied species provided support at every step, their ships flying alongside human vessels in unprecedented cooperation. The galaxy watched in amazement. Many had dismissed humans as a young species, aggressive but ultimately minor players in galactic politics. Now they saw something different. They saw a civilization that would move heaven and earth for a single person, not because he was important, but simply because he was theirs. On the 19th day, found what they were looking for. He was analyzing communications intercepted from a destroyed courier ship when he noticed a pattern. Certain transmissions were encrypted differently than others, using protocols that matched no known syndicate codes. He worked through the night, his injured mind straining against the complex algorithms. By morning, he had cracked it. The transmissions revealed the location of a hidden base in the Ash Nebula, deep in lawless space beyond the reach of any government. The base served as the syndicate's most secure facility, a place where they conducted experiments and held prisoners too valuable to keep anywhere else. Danny Cole was there. The transmissions confirmed it. Brought his findings to Commander immediately. The commander studied the data and felt hope for the first time in weeks, but he also felt concern. The Ash Nebula was treacherous territory, filled with radiation storms and gravitational anomalies that made navigation dangerous. And the had certainly prepared defenses. Sent word to every ship in the fleet. They would gather at the edge of the Ash Nebula in 3 days. From there, they would launch the largest assault in galactic history. Meanwhile, in his cell on the hidden base, Danny Cole clung to consciousness by sheer willpower. The experiments had grown more intense. His captors were growing frustrated by his resistance. The genetic marker refused to activate despite their best efforts, and Danny refused to help them understand why. He gave them nothing but silence and defiance. His body was covered in bruises. His head throbbed constantly from the neural probes they used. He had lost weight because he could barely keep food down, but his spirit remained unbroken. He thought about his mother every day. He imagined her voice telling him to stay strong, to never give up, to remember who he was. He thought about Emma and wondered if she was taking care of the farm. He thought about and hoped his friend had survived the attack. He did not know that help was coming. He had no way of knowing that humanity had turned the galaxy upside down looking for him. But somewhere deep inside, he believed that someone was coming. He had to believe it. The alternative was despair, and Danny Cole refused to despair. One night, a guard brought him food and lingered at the door. The guard was young, barely more than a teenager, with nervous eyes that suggested he had not chosen this life willingly. The guard whispered something that made Danny's heart stop. "They are coming for you," the guard said. "The humans. They have destroyed everything. The leaders are scared. No one has ever seen anything like this." Danny stared at the guard, unable to speak. The guard continued quickly, afraid of being caught. "They burned through our defenses like they were nothing. They say the human fleet will reach us soon. Days, maybe less." He glanced over his shoulder, then looked back at Danny. "Whatever you are," he said, "you must be worth a lot for them to do this." Danny found his voice. He was just a farm boy from Kansas. He was nobody special. The guard shook his head slowly. He said that nobody sends 200 warships for nobody special. Then he left, closing the door behind him. Danny sat alone in his cell and felt something he had almost forgotten. Hoping. The fleet gathered at the edge of the Ash Nebula. 237 ships from Earth and allied species, the largest military force ever assembled for a rescue mission. Commander looked at the swirling clouds of the nebula and knew that many of his people might not survive what came next. He addressed the fleet through a broadcast that reached every ship. "We are here for one man," he said. "One ordinary man who represents everything humanity believes in. We do not leave our people behind. We do not abandon the innocent. We do not bow to those who prey on the weak." He paused and let his words sink in. "Today, we remind the galaxy what that means." The fleet entered the Ash Nebula, and the final battle began. The Ash Nebula burned with the light of 1,000 weapons. Commander watched from the bridge of the Relentless as the battle unfolded across 3 dimensions of space. They had prepared their defenses well. Automated weapons platforms filled the approaches to their base. Mines drifted through the nebula clouds. A fleet of Syndicate warships formed a defensive line around the station. But they were facing something they had never encountered before, a civilization fighting for one of its own. Human ships pushed through the outer defenses, taking damage but never stopping. Allied cruisers flanked the formation, their 4-armed crews working with mechanical precision. Intelligence vessels coordinated targeting data across the fleet. Medical ships hung back, ready to save anyone who could be saved. They fought with desperation. They knew what defeat meant. The humans had shown mercy to those who surrendered, but the leaders of this base had personally overseen experiments on Danny Cole. They expected no mercy and deserved none. Directed the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. He sent squadrons to eliminate weapon platforms while heavier ships engaged the enemy fleet. He tracked casualties and damage reports and made decisions that would haunt him for years. The carrier Steadfast took a direct hit and began to break apart. Her crew evacuated in escape pods while the ship continued fighting on automatic systems, buying time for her sisters. 73 sailors died in that sacrifice, recorded their names for later when there would be time to mourn. After 4 hours, the defensive line collapsed. Enemy ships began surrendering or fleeing into the nebula. The Allied fleet ignored the runners and focused on the station. Intelligence confirmed that Danny Cole was still inside, still alive. That was all that mattered. While the main battle raged, a small team prepared for the most dangerous part of the operation. Had identified maintenance tunnels leading into the base from an old docking port that they no longer used. The tunnels were cramped and poorly maintained, but they offered a way to bypass the station's internal defenses. The infiltration team consisted of 12 human Marines led by a woman named Lisa Grant. She was 28 years old, compact and athletic, with eyes that missed nothing. She had volunteered for this mission without hesitation when she learned what it involved. Accompanied the team despite protests from the medical officers. His telepathic abilities had partially recovered, and he could sense life forms through walls and floors. In the confined spaces of the maintenance tunnels, that ability would be invaluable. Their shuttle detached from the Relentless during the heaviest fighting and slipped through the chaos unnoticed. They reached the abandoned docking port and forced their way inside. The tunnels were dark and filled with debris, but guided them forward with quiet confidence. They encountered their first guards 20 minutes into the infiltration, sensed them before they rounded the corner, giving the Marines time to prepare. The firefight was brief and brutal. 2 guards fell. None of the team was injured. They moved deeper into the base. Outside, the battle was ending. Commander ordered the remaining enemy ships to surrender or be destroyed. Most chose surrender. The station's external defenses had been silenced. Transport ships filled with Marines prepared to board. But the infiltration team had to reach Danny first. Intelligence suggested the leaders would try to escape with their valuable prisoner if given the chance. Lisa Grant led her team through corridors that grew increasingly chaotic. The station was in disarray as crew members fled their posts and tried to reach escape vessels. Some fought, most ran. Suddenly stopped and raised a hand. He closed his silver eyes and reached out with his damaged telepathy. "I sense him," said Danny. "He is alive but weak, 3 levels down near the central core." He paused and his expression darkened. "They are moving him, the leaders. They are trying to reach a private hangar." Lisa Grant made an instant decision. She split her team. 6 Marines would continue toward the main resistance and draw attention. She and 4 others would intercept the leaders. They ran through the station, following mental guidance. Emergency lights flickered. Explosions echoed from distant sections where boarding Marines had begun their assault. The station was dying, and everyone inside knew it. They reached the loading bay for the private hangar just as the leaders arrived. The who had captured Danny stood at the center of a group of guards. He held Danny by the arm, dragging the young man toward a sleek shuttle that waited with engines warming. Danny could barely walk. His face was pale and his clothes were torn and stained. But his eyes were open, and when he saw the human Marines, something like hope flickered in them. Lisa Grant did not hesitate. She shouted for them to surrender and release the prisoner. The laughed. He raised a weapon and aimed it at Danny's head. He said that the humans would let him leave, or their precious farm boy would die right here. For a moment, nobody moved. Then did something nobody expected. They stepped forward, hands raised and empty, speaking in a calm voice. He addressed them directly, using words that seemed to carry unusual weight. He told the leader that the humans would never stop. Even if Danny died here, even if they escaped, they would hunt him across the galaxy for the rest of his life. They would find him. They would destroy everything he built. And in the end, he would die knowing that all of it was pointless. But if he surrendered now, said, there might be mercy. There might be a future. They hesitated. His guards looked nervous. The sounds of battle were getting closer. That hesitation was enough. Lisa Grant moved with training and instinct. She fired twice, hitting the guards closest to Danny. Her team opened fire a heartbeat later. The loading bay erupted in chaos. They tried to use Danny as a shield, but Danny was not as weak as he appeared. He twisted in the leader's grip and drove an elbow into his captor's stomach. They stumbled and Lisa Grant put a round through his shoulder. The remaining guards scattered or fell, reached Danny and helped him stand. The young man looked at his friend with eyes that glistened with tears he refused to let fall. "You came," Danny whispered. "We all came," said. "The whole galaxy came for you." Lisa Grant approached them while her team secured the loading bay. She checked Danny for immediate injuries and found too many to count. He needed medical attention urgently. But he was alive. That was what mattered. She called Commander on her communication unit. The words she spoke would be remembered for generations. "Package secured," she said. "Danny Cole is coming home." The Relentless received the transmission in the middle of the final push against the station. For a moment, the bridge crew fell silent. Then someone cheered, and the sound spread through the ship and across the fleet. They had done it. Against all odds, across countless light years, they had found their boy and brought him back. The leader survived his wound. He was taken into custody along with hundreds of other syndicate members. The base was captured and its data cores secured. Evidence of countless crimes would lead to trials and convictions for years. But that was for later. Right now, only one thing mattered. A medical shuttle carried Danny Cole away from the dying station, rode beside him, holding his hand. Lisa Grant sat nearby, her weapon finally lowered, her mission complete. Danny drifted in and out of consciousness. He heard voices telling him he was safe now. He felt hands tending to his injuries. He smelled clean air for the first time in weeks. And somewhere in his fading awareness, he thought he heard his mother's voice telling him to come home. The fleet began its journey back to Earth, carrying a young man who had survived the worst the galaxy could throw at him. The war was over, the hunt was complete. Now it was time for healing. The shuttle descended through cloud that Danny Cole had dreamed about for weeks. He sat by the window, watching the blue sky of Earth grow closer. His body still ached from the injuries he had suffered. Doctors on the fleet had done their best, but full recovery would take months. None of that mattered now. He was home. The landing pad was located just outside Washington, the same facility where he had departed for space 18 months earlier. Through the viewport, he could see crowds gathered behind security barriers. Thousands of people had come to witness his return. Millions more watched through broadcasts that reached every corner of the planet. But Danny was not looking at the crowds. He was looking at two figures standing at the edge of the landing pad, separated from everyone else by a ring of respectful space. His mother wore the same blue dress she had worn to his graduation. His sister Emma stood beside her, taller than he remembered, no longer the little girl who had cried when he left for the stars. The shuttle touched down. The doors opened. Danny stood on legs that wanted to shake but refused to do so. He walked down the ramp slowly, not because of his injuries but because he wanted to remember every moment of this. The wind carried the smell of grass and flowers and the particular sweetness of Earth's atmosphere. Somewhere nearby, birds were singing. The sun felt warm on his face. Cole broke away from her position and ran toward her son. Emma followed a heartbeat later. They collided with Danny in an embrace that nearly knocked him off his feet. No words were spoken, none were needed. The world watched as Danny held his mother and sister on a landing pad in Washington. Some viewers cried, others cheered. All of them understood that they were witnessing something beyond politics or military victory. They were witnessing the reason humanity had set the galaxy ablaze. The days that followed were a blur of medical treatments and debriefings and ceremonies that Danny endured with quiet patience. Officials wanted to give him medals. Reporters wanted interviews. Politicians wanted to shake his hand and be photographed with the hero of the hour. Danny declined most of it. He was not a hero. He was a survivor who wanted to go home. 3 weeks after his return, the Cole family finally left Washington and headed back to Kansas. The farm looked exactly as Danny remembered. The white farmhouse needed a new coat of paint. The wheat fields stretched toward the horizon in golden waves. The old barn where he had played as a child still stood, slightly more crooked than before. He stepped out of the vehicle and breathed air that smelled like home. Emma showed him around the farm, pointing out all the changes she had made while he was gone. She had taken over most of the daily work when their mother's health began to fail under the stress of his capture. She was only 17 but had grown up fast. Danny felt pride and guilt in equal measure. His family had suffered because of him. The universe had nearly destroyed everything they had. But it had also shown them something beautiful. During Danny's captivity, neighbors had worked the coal farm without being asked. The community had supported, and Emma through the darkest days. Complete strangers had sent letters and donations and prayers. The world had taken care of his family, because Danny was one of their own. A week after returning to the farm, Danny received a visitor he had been waiting for. Arrived in a small shuttle that landed gently in the wheat field behind the house. He emerged looking nervous and uncertain, his silver skin glinting in the Kansas sunlight. Danny met him with an embrace that surprised them both. They sat on the porch and watched the sunset together. Danny served lemonade that Emma had made. They played chess on the same board Danny had used as a child, the pieces worn smooth by years of handling. One as usual. The alien spoke quietly about his experiences during the rescue. He described his fear and determination, the long nights analyzing data, the final confrontation in the loading bay. He said that he had never been more frightened in his life. But he also said that he had never felt more alive. Helping to save, Danny had given him something his anxiety had always stolen: purpose. Danny listened and understood. They were both different now. They had both been changed by what happened, but they were still friends, and that mattered more than anything. Before left, he gave Danny a gift. It was a small crystal from his, carved with symbols that meant friendship and courage. Danny put it on his windowsill where it would catch the morning light. Lisa Grant received a promotion and a commendation for her actions during the rescue. She accepted both with typical military dignity, then requested assignment to a training facility where she could prepare the next generation of soldiers. When asked about the mission, she said only that she was proud to have been part of it. Danny Cole was a good man, and good men deserved to come home. Commander retired from active service 6 months after the rescue. He had lost too many people in the Ash Nebula, and the weight of those deaths had finally become too heavy to carry while in uniform. But before he retired, he visited Danny on the farm. The two men sat in the kitchen and talked for hours about everything and nothing, admitted that he had been terrified throughout the entire operation. He had never been more afraid of failure in his life. Danny thanked him, said thanks were not necessary, they had simply done what humans do. Ambassador Wells addressed the Galactic Council one final time before returning to Earth for a long-overdue vacation. Her speech was brief and measured, as always. She explained that Danny Cole was safe and recovering. The Syndicate had been shattered beyond recovery. The galaxy was a safer place because humanity had refused to accept the unacceptable. Some had questioned whether the response was proportional, she said. Some had worried that Earth was becoming too aggressive, too dangerous, too unpredictable. Paused and looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 100 species. Let me be clear, she said. What happened was not about military power or political influence. It was about a promise. Earth promises every citizen that they will never be abandoned. They will never be forgotten. They will never be left behind. She let those words settle before continuing. This is who we are. This is who we have always been. And this is who we will always be. The council received her words in silence. Some were uncomfortable. Others were thoughtful. A few, including the ambassador, nodded with what looked like respect. On a distant planet, far from Earth and the Galactic Council, a young alien child looked up at her parent and asked a question. She wanted to know why humans were treated with such respect. They were not the oldest species or the strongest or the most advanced. What made them special? Her parent thought carefully before answering. Long ago, she said, humans taught the galaxy something important. They showed us that strength is not about weapons or numbers or technology, Strength is about what you are willing to do for the people you love. The child did not entirely understand. She was too young for such complex ideas. But she remembered the answer years later, when she encountered her first humans and saw the way they looked out for each other. Back on the coal farm in Kansas, Danny stood in the wheat field as stars began to appear in the evening sky. He could identify some of them now. He knew which ones had planets and which ones had been stops on his journey home. His mother called him for dinner. Emma was setting the table. The smell of roasted chicken drifted through the open windows. Danny looked up at the stars one more time. He thought about everything that had happened and everything that might come next. He thought about Lisa Grant and Commander and all the others who had risked their lives for him. He thought about what it meant to belong to a species that would burn the galaxy for a single person. Then he smiled, turned away from the stars, and walked toward the light of home. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. Humanity never leaves anyone behind.